Welcome, my friends, to the Trevor Chapman Show. This is Trevor, and this is our place, yours and mine, where we talk and learn from the best minds on this beautiful earth about entrepreneurship, achievement. We are purveyors of the good life, curating environments that promote and even demand Kairos moments of success, happiness, euphoric achievement. I mean, we work relentlessly to attain levels of the highest performance in business and life. Here is to our collective happiness and to celebrating our human experience. My friends, it's time to run. Good day, my friends. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of our podcast, The Trevor Chapman Show. We have a fascinating conversation with Rabbi Friedman. Now, I need to give you a little warning in advance. The audio in this interview, in this conversation, not an interview, is less than acceptable. This was not our first try. We've had multiple tries to fix the audio, but we couldn't get the quality any higher on the Rabbi side. And so I felt that the conversation was so fascinating, though, that even with inferior audio, it is a worthy listen to anybody. So please overlook the fact that the audio is imperfect. Sit back, relax, grab a pen and paper, and enjoy this episode of the Trevor Chapman Show with Rabbi Friedman. Welcome, my friends, to the Trevor Chapman Show. This is Trevor. We are excited today to have with us an incredible individual, Rabbi Friedman. Rabbi, thank you for joining us today.
It's a pleasure. Can't wait to get started.
Wonderful. So, Rabbi, to start off, for my audience, if you could give us the 60,000-foot overview of your history, who you are, and the past few decades that have kind of brought you up to who you're known as today.
I moved to Minnesota right after we were married in 1970, and we started a program there in the Chabad house for a crash course on Judaism for women, because there were a few yeshivas that were open for men, adult men who didn't have an education as children, but there was nothing for women at the time. So we started this program. It was a short course during the summer break. And since then, the program has continued almost with a life of its own. So about, I would say close to 30,000 women have been through the program, whether it's for 2 weeks or a long weekend or for a month. And it turns out that this is really life-changing information. A little Chabad philosophy, basic Judaism, and lives change. Of course, the main topic, the most popular topic, is family and the success or the failure of marriage. So from that long-term conversation over 46 years or so, this resulted in the book. So it's really an insight into what makes relationships work, what are they supposed to be, what's getting in the way, how do we get to what marriage is really supposed to give us, the benefits, the blessings. And now that I've been talking about this book to such a variety of audiences, I can't believe how responsive people are. It must be the times. There's something about what's going on in the world today that makes the topic so meaningful and so intuitively understandable and acceptable.
So it's interesting. I grew up in a family. I was the oldest of 5 kids. I lived in Guam until I was 12, and then Alaska after that. And so moving around and living in areas that aren't mainstream, suburbanville, United States, family was central to how I was raised. My wife also grew up in a large family, 9 kids, similar situation. As I look out and I assess my friends, the vast majority of those friends that I had when we were younger growing up are not in fulfilling relationships, specifically marriage, are not in fulfilling marriages. There's an absolute breakdown. I mean, this has been happening for 46 years now as you talk about this conversation, but I imagine the conversation 46 years ago is different, or the questions being asked in your institute are different than they were 46 years ago than they are today? Like, what dramatic shifts have you seen?
I think the most dramatic thing is that back then, the issue was dysfunctional families, couples who just couldn't get along. They didn't like each other. They were destroying each other. And then you try to figure out, how do we overcome the differences? Marriage counseling, patch it up, a little communication skill, maybe anger management, and all of those solutions. But today, the really scary thing is that couples in successful marriages, happy marriages, functional marriages, and yet you speak to them individually, and they will tell you that there are moments when they feel completely alone in the world, which is a horrible feeling. So if this is happening in successful marriages, and there's something really fundamental that is missing, and it's not going to get fixed by having better communication skills. It's got to get down to the bedrock of what a marriage is, what is intimacy, why is it lacking in successful marriages with happy couples, and what do we do to get it back?
So what is that supposed to be then? You talk about the bedrock of the foundation of what it is, the intimacy and that marriage union. What is it?
Okay, so I think the first thing we need to look at is the difference between the individual as a person versus the individual as a collection of aspects, details. Like when a man says, "I love everything about my wife," that sounds ideal. But when you look at it a little closer, you love everything about your wife. Do you love your wife? Well, I love everything about her. Yeah, well, that was not the question. The question is, do you love her? And the average man will say, well, what about her? No, not about her, just her. Do you love her? Most people don't even understand what that means. If you take all the things about her away, what are you left with? So listen to this shocking thing. If a man says to a woman, "I love you for your money. I want to marry you for your money," what is wrong with that? Why does everybody agree it's meaningless and nasty? It's because it's not true. I don't love you for your money. I love the money. And if I marry you for the money, I'm not really married to you. I am married to the money. And that's why if we do get married, we will both be alone in the world because I'm married to your money, not to you. Now, why is it better if I say I want to marry you for love? If I marry you for love, I am married to the money, to the love, like to the money. And I'm still not married to you. So you talk to couples who are getting divorced. We fell out of love. So if the love is gone, there's absolutely no role for you in my life. So if I don't love you, what are you doing in my house? You're a total stranger. So why is it better to be married to the love than to the money? Money is more useful. So if I'm not married to you anyway, at least I should get some money out of it. It's really, love is destroying marriages because we worship love. Love has become the God of America. In fact, people say God is love, which means love is God. So if God wasn't love, we wouldn't need him either, because we're not looking for him, we're looking for love. So we've got to get past all things and connect to the person we're with. And one of those things is love. Love is a thing. You can have it, not have it. You can have more, you can have less. It can come, it can go. It's an it. But you're married to a person, not to a thing.
Well, so this is kind of like an ethereal topic. I think it's especially pertinent since the ability to connect with people, I kind of look at the internet as the culmination of what we value the most. And what we value the most in my limited experience is connection. And the internet provides for that. Irregardless of geography, space, time, we can give ideas, we can transfer emotions, we can give information, we can gather information, gather emotions. It allows us to connect, whereas before it, we didn't have that opportunity to, in a microsecond, speak back and forth. And the internet solves for that, but like all things, it doesn't matter how thin you slice it, there's always two sides. So while providing the facade of connection, it also totally removes us from connection, because we always have that device between us, and eventually the dopamine and the serotonin squirts that we get in our brain that we love are no longer associated with the actual person we're connecting with, but with the device that we're connecting with. And so it's this chasm where it is a beneficial tool so long as it doesn't become more than a tool, which it's hard to not have. Now, interestingly, over the last century, marriages again, so I defer. So in all my statements, I'm saying I do not know as much as you, Rabbi. So that's just a given. But from what I understand, marriages have gone from something of a utility to a fairy tale, whereas prior true love was only for the prince or the princess, and everyone else marriages to strengthen family connections, interfamily relations, even relations between countries. It's now no longer like that. Now we have the fairy tales that we grow up with, and we believe that the marriage is a manifestation of having achieved the love that you're talking about. And so when you talk about love being this tertiary thing that we can have it, we can lose it, money is more. And when you explain it this way, it makes perfect sense. But money is a far better tool to have than love, because it's material and things can actually come from it. It's not this ethereal thing that, for one person can be there and for another it can't. Whereas money, it's either there for both people or it's not. What does it actually mean to connect with the person, not about them, not love for them, but the person? What does that even mean?
That is a very good question. And there are two parts to it. Number one, what is the person when you strip away all things? And number two, this is also fascinating, what do you need with another person? What is this need we have to introduce another person other than ourselves into our lives? Where does that need come from? Why would it exist? If I'm doing fine and I don't need anything from you, why would I need you? So it's almost like, if I like the things you have, then I understand why I want you in my life. But if it's not about those things and it's just you, that's fine. So you be you, I'll be me. Why are we meshing our lives with each other? What do I need you for, if not for something? I think the only answer I found is biblical, because the Torah says that the original human being was created male and female. Then we know that God separated, took the rib and all that stuff. So God separated them and they became two people. We've always assumed that plastic surgery was a vast improvement and made us normal, because being both male and female sounds a little weird. But the truth is that all separation is unnatural. All separation is unholy. Holiness is oneness. God is one. So the separation was not an improvement. It was a step down. And immediately after separating the man from the woman, God says to them, therefore, you should get married, you should cleave to your spouse and become one. Which means oneness is the proper way to be, but you should achieve it on your own effort, not as a given. So by marrying, you get back to the oneness that you were created with. So without the merging of a male and female into one being, we are each incomplete. So what do we need from each other? Just the other. Even God created the world not for something, because God is perfect. Why would he need anything? And yet, precisely because he is so perfect, he is able to need someone without any conditions. I don't need anything from you. I just need you to be besides me. It's a divine instinct. God has that instinct. We were created in his image, so we also have that instinct. It is the godliest part of us. So when I need you, not something from you, and I can't have you for whatever reason, what would I be missing? Would that make me imperfect? No, it wouldn't make me imperfect, because what's missing is you. You are absent in my life. You're missing. I miss you, not something about you. So nothing you get from your spouse can be as important as your spouse. That is so logically simple and true. And yet we've been so distracted. So the man who says, I love everything about my wife, that's polygamy. You're married to too many things. And she is not one of them. So no wonder you feel alone in the world.
So how does one, so here, this is an interesting conversation. You know, when I first met my wife, I was 21, she was 20. And I just, I was head over heels. And she kept trying to get me to explain what it is. She's like, why do you love me? And I'm like, I don't know. I love you. And she wanted to understand what those things were. It was something I really couldn't put in words. And now it's something that I think, having grown up vastly differently now, we mold into each other and we see things similarly, and she understands what I'm saying. But let me take a step back for a little bit. So I studied philosophy in college, and there's this thing called eudaimonium. And it is this concept that I do action A because I believe that it will then cause action B, which will then cause action C. And ultimately, it will lead to the core root of everything that we do, is because we believe it will make us happy. Now, happy is this word that's subjective. So let's call it tranquil. It will bring us tranquility. Or in other words, it'll put us in a state of joy. So if we can lay that down as maybe a partial foundation, describe that marriage, that relationship that you're talking about right now, where it's not, I love all these things about her, but her, or I don't love all these things about him, but him. What does that look like? And my question is, how can that compete popularly with the Prince Charming fairy tales?
Very, very good question. First, let's get love out of the way. You know that old song, love and marriage go together like a horse and carriage? It's not true. It's a dangerous concept. If you love somebody with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might, you have no reason to marry them. One has nothing to do with the other. So a man and a woman meet, I love you, well, let's get married. I don't see why that is the result of love. Like marriage is the price you pay for being in love. What are you getting married for? You love each other, and that's great. What do you want, more love? Marriage will bring more love? Or marriage will lock you into the relationship even when you stop loving, and then you have a big mess on your hands. Love and marriage don't go together like a horse and carriage. In fact, don't ever get married unless you believe in marriage, you are enamored with marriage, and you feel like marriage is the only way to be. So you get married because marriage is right. It's the way we always heard it should be. We'll marry. Now, who are you going to marry? You'll find somebody, hopefully somebody that you feel comfortable with, that there's no friction with, and therefore you love each other. But you do not marry because of the love. You marry because marriage is the way it should be, for whatever reason. Who you choose to do it with should first of all be someone who shares your belief in marriage, and then someone you can get along with comfortably because you have enough in common, because you feel right to each other. That's where the love comes in. So the love does not determine the marriage. The love determines who you're going to do this marriage thing with. So you go out on your first date. The first thing you want to know is not, does he love me? But does he love marriage? Because if he doesn't love marriage and I'm looking for marriage, then we've got nothing to talk about, no matter how nice a guy he is. So what exactly do we want of a marriage after we're in love? Or even if we're not in love, what do we want with the marriage? So experts are saying, just very recently, that the emphasis on getting more pleasure out of your relationship, that's been, I think, the last 20, 30 years, that's been the emphasis. The best relationship, the best sex, the best, all the secrets to a better sex life and all of that. The experts are now saying that that was a mistake. We don't need more pleasure. We're a very comfortable generation. We don't need more pleasure. We have chocolate. We don't need more pleasure. The reason we engage in relationships is because we need more closeness. That's an improvement, but it's still not a marriage. Closeness is kind of a weak word. Closeness you should have with your neighbors, with your family, with anyone who's decent and friendly. There should be some closeness. The magic of marriage is that you actually become one. And the better word for that is to be mine. I am yours, you are mine. Sometimes we don't love each other because, life introduces all sorts of frictions. So sometimes we don't love each other, but we belong to each other, with each other. Like in Fiddler on the Roof, remember? Tevye says to Golda, "Do you love me?" And she sings the song about 25 years, I've done your clothes, I've made your meals. So he asks her about love, and she tells him about laundry. But she's giving him the right answer. What she's saying is, you want to know if I'm giving you my love? For 25 years, I've given myself to you. You have me. I'm all yours. And of course, that includes my love. But why are you selecting love out of all other virtues? Why is that more interesting and more important than me? And then she concludes, and if that's not love, then what is? So what are we trying to get out of marriage? We want to become one. We want to belong to each other. We want to be able to say, this is my place. This is my spouse. I belong here. And if you think about it, it's so powerful and so beautiful. There are moments that everybody should have where you're doing something or you're somewhere and it's so perfect. It's so perfect. You can't imagine how anything could be better. Like a mother looking at her baby when the baby is asleep. There's nothing else you'd rather do. There's no place else you'd rather be. This is perfect. And if time stopped and this was like the freeze frame and you stayed like this forever, you would be perfectly content. That's what every home should feel like. And the word home is also much more powerful than the word love. A home is where you belong. It's your place in the world. So what it should feel like is you come home to your spouse. You are now exactly where you belong, and there's no other place you'd rather be. You are now doing exactly what you should be doing, and there's nothing else you'd rather do. And you are with the person you are meant to be with. This is the other in your life, and there's no place, no one else that you would rather be with. If you have those three conditions, you are literally in heaven. That doesn't happen as a result of love. You love somebody very much, but if this is not the person in your life, you're still alone in the world. But you're getting the pleasure of the love. We don't need more pleasure. Love does not connect you. Love does not merge two people, because each person is feeling their own love, which the other one cannot feel. So it literally keeps you separate. Like, I love you is a very selfish little sentence. It starts with I and it ends with you. Any sentence that begins with I is not going to merge me with you, because I'm not shedding my surface tension. I'm being me. I did it my way. I gotta be me. Well, that keeps me separate from you. So what we're talking about is really transcending self, not finding more pleasure for myself. When I dissolve into a relationship, that's when I become one with another person.
When I try to envision this in my head, this entire scenario that you illustrate as you describe it, I see it. So help me see this properly, because I think I'm not seeing it properly, because I see it when I look at a world in which this type of relationship is amenable, a world in which this works at the highest level. I see a early farming lifestyle. I see a hunter-gatherer lifestyle. I see a situation where it makes a lot of sense to have that person that is your second half or whatever. Doesn't matter if there's love or not, because to fulfill the obligation to survive and pass your genetic code on, that's necessary. Now, we are in a different world. And let me tell you why I'm thinking this. We really, I could survive and live without my family and they without me. I would be, I believe, less happy, because having once experienced my kids and my wife, I know what that feels like. And so to go to a world where I don't have that would cause me to differentiate the two. And in my mind, having not experienced that yet, but in my mind, if I had to experience that, I would fill that void or that vacuum. Now, I have 3 little girls, one's 7, one is 5, and one is newborn. And I think to myself, do I want them to find a man that says to them, look, I'll be yours, you be mine. I'll fall out of love with you from time to time. I'm not in love with you right now, but we make a good match. And so I'll be yours fully. We'll have closeness, etc. Hopefully this builds into love. Whew, that, Rabbi, that's hard for me to stomach. If I sat down across from a young man that said that to me, and then he said, can I have your daughter's hand in marriage? I would probably say, get out of this house ASAP, my friend, because I want them to marry someone that, yes, fulfills that need, because I understand that life gets in the way. You've got Maslow's hierarchy of needs, any other hierarchy of needs. It's hard to transcend to the higher virtues and values when you may be trying to just put food on the table, right? And so love is not going to put food on the table. Hard work, dedication to the other person, I understand that. But man, I want my girls, when they finally find that person to get married, to feel like Sleeping Beauty, to feel like Snow White, to feel like Cinderella. I want them to be adored and loved and literally to be someone's princess. Like, I want that for them. Why is that? Am I seeing this incorrectly, or have I been raised to see through a specific lens? And because of that, it's so indoctrinated deep deep in the manifolds of my brain that I can't see past this.
Okay. I don't know what's going on in your manifolds. Yes, we have been brainwashed to believe that love is the ultimate experience. But imagine if somebody says to you, I'm madly in love with your daughter. Can I marry her? You should ask, why marry her? You're in love with her, she's your princess? That's great. What do you need to marry her for? So in the last 80 years or so, every marriage in America was married out of love. It was that princess vision and dream. And look at what's happened to marriages. See, love cannot carry a relationship. Love is the spice. It's not the relationship. So if a person says, I love you very much, let's have a relationship, you got to ask, a relationship based on what? Well, based on the fact that I love you. No, I don't think so. The love is the spice of life. It is not the definition of life. Here's something really, I found it amazing. If we had to define what exactly is a human being as compared to animal, vegetable, and mineral, just the nature of a human being. We're not naked apes. What is a human being? The nature of a human being is the human being is never content being human. Unlike animal, if you allow an animal to follow its instincts, it's perfectly content. A vegetable, if you provide a little water, a little sunshine, perfectly content to be what it finds itself being. It just doesn't want to be interrupted. The human being, on the other hand, finds himself human and wonders, what more can I be? Because what I already am is not to my credit. So even if I'm the best human being, I'm just human. That's how I found myself. What did I contribute? What did I introduce? I need to be something more than what I was given. That's the natural instinct of the human, which animals don't have and vegetables don't have, certainly minerals don't have. The first thing we can do to become more than ourselves is to dissolve into a mutual oneness with another human being who has completely different thoughts, independent personality, maybe even clashing personality traits, and yet we dissolve, we get past ourselves, and now we are something more than how we found ourselves. And that's why having a wonderful relationship with your mother, your father, and your siblings doesn't do it, because that's how you were born. Marriage is something you achieve. It takes you beyond yourself. And the satisfaction that brings is almost more than human.
That's very incredible. As you say that and I hear that, I look through my actions, what I'm passionate about, what I'm focused on, and I wonder to what extent I do what I do because I want to be the responsible force for creating something more than just being born into it without any participation in that event whatsoever. And that's fascinating. So, Rabbi, I have a question, and this is a question that I ask most entrepreneurs and athletes, whoever else, these high achievers that I'll chat with. And I'm curious on your thoughts of this and your answer. It's a little bit more ethereal. I hope that's okay. The question is, of your desires that you've had over your lifetime, how many of your desires were truly your desire, and how many did you think you were just supposed to desire? So acted on or otherwise, but uniquely your desires.
Boy, you're getting close to some really fascinating truths and realities. Once you think about it, the way you word it, there is nothing in the human makeup that we really need or desire. Nothing. The truth is, I don't need anything. I didn't ask to be born because I don't need to be born. I don't need any of it. So even my desires or my needs, I don't need. I'm just saddled with them. Like, I need to eat. Actually, I need to stop eating, but that's a different subject. I don't need to eat. I am born with the need to eat. I can't call it mine. It's not my need. Like if I was really a great surgeon and I'm in the middle of life-saving surgery, I need to stop and go to sleep because I've been up for more than 12 hours. I don't need to go to sleep. I need to finish the surgery, but I can't because I have been saddled without my approval. I have been saddled with this handicap. I can't go for more than 12 hours until my eyes start to close, and I can't go for more than 3 or 4 hours before I get hungry. I don't like it. I don't want it. I don't need it, and I can't get rid of it. So what really is my desire? See, you're asking it perfectly. Do I even have desires? Or is that all part of the software that I'm programmed with from birth? Turns out that we need to move beyond psychology. Psychology gave us great insights into what we are, but we need to move beyond what we are. So the better we understand what we are, the more we realize we need to move on. So psychology does not solve any of our problems, and in some cases, it amplifies them because it makes you focus on yourself, and there's nothing about yourself that you really need. So listen to this. You have the option, the choice, free choice, right? What is our choice? Our choice is, do you want to be neat or do you want to be needed? That's it. That's the story of life. Those are your options. You have needs and you are needed. What's more important? It turns out that by the human natural instinct, we would much rather be needed than have our needs met. I would rather be needed than be needy. And who needs me? Well, first of all, whoever created me obviously needs me because I didn't ask to be born. So I am the result of someone else's need. Now, if I can fulfill someone else's need, then I feel like I'm legitimate. If I'm just pursuing my own needs, I just feel needy, and I'll probably never satisfy those needs anyway, so I will die frustrated. But if I feel like I fulfilled somebody else's need because I was needed, I will die a content human being.
That is interesting. That kind of takes it down and boils it down to just the raw element. So here's a question. And as you were talking, this was circling around in my head. I, about a month ago, took one of my daughters to see the symphony here. And as I reflect on that experience, she too young to fully appreciate it. But if I break down, you just talked about breaking down this entire experience that we're collectively and individually going through this life. And you broke it down to just being needed or needing. And that's incredible. I think that every action can be broken down to that. I'm going to spend a lot of time after this just pondering that. But I want to break this experience down. The symphony is rubbing horsehair on metal and blowing air through pieces of bamboo. And what's happening is they're creating vibrating airwaves. Like fundamentally, that's what is happening. The oxygen molecules, the carbon that's floating around, the nitrogen, everything that's just kind of floating around, all that's happening is they're causing vibration to occur. And that is it. That's what exists. Now, the grandeur of life is that we interpret something of that. Of all the ways that we could have interpreted these vibrations, it enters our air canal, and we turn it into something that can move us. We turn it into beauty, into horror, depending on what piece it is. Here's the fascinating thing to me. What's fascinating to me is that we do this individually, but create a collective experience. If you and I both look at the sunset in the morning, all that's really happening is a star that is hundreds of thousands of light years away is shooting protons and photons at us in some massive reaction. They're so small that we can't see them. We kind of perceive them because there's trillions of them and they bounce off of everything. Something so impossibly large, infinitely large, coming into something so small as our pupil and then our optic nerve. And then what we do is we take these protons and photons that are flying all around and we turn them in our heads into the sunrise. It's not purple, it's not red, it's not blue, it's not white. We make it that by opening up our eyes and looking at it. Now I can sit and I can look at it. And together, you and I, Rabbi, we can have almost a transcendent experience together, looking at the sunrise and be amazed at that experience. And another person can walk up, see the same thing. Their brain can turn it into the same masterpiece that we see, but they can turn a blind eye to it. This ability to take particles and turn it into emotion or ignore it is so unique. I try to wrap my head around it, and I can't fully understand what it all is. So what is that? What are your thoughts on just that? There's no question beyond that's what's happening, and that's how we interpret it. What does that mean to you?
There are people who are resistant to inspiration. They don't let things get to them. I don't know if it's self-defense. I don't know if it's an insecurity or an arrogance. I am complete. Nothing needs to move me. Nothing needs to get to me. And I will reject it. Everything bounces off me. So I can look at the most beautiful scene. It doesn't touch me. I'm invulnerable. Then there are people who would rather be vulnerable. They want to be touched. They want to be reached. They want to be moved by what's out there that is bigger than them, more real than them, more powerful than them. They're open to that. They are vulnerable. Now, for many years, people believed that vulnerability was a weakness. Psychology finally enlightened us. Vulnerability comes from strength. When you're comfortable enough with yourself to let yourself be vulnerable, that's a strength. That makes you bigger than yourself. It doesn't threaten you. So the way I see it from a Hasidic perspective, God is the most vulnerable being of all, which is what makes him lovable. He is vulnerable because here he is, eternal, perfect, almighty, all-knowing, and he creates a world. Why? For what? And he creates a world with people who have a mind of their own, a will of their own, who can love him or hate him, accept him or reject him, believe in him or deny him. And this is what he wants. He is so vulnerable because if vulnerability comes from strength, then he should be the most vulnerable because he's the strongest. So we serve him, we respond to him by allowing ourselves to be vulnerable to him. And that's only natural because he's so vulnerable to us. So I think the difference between the guy who is deeply moved by the sunset and the guy who is not is the difference between being vulnerable or trying to be invulnerable.
So as you say that, I have this desire to be ravaged in rapture. Like to just be absolutely overwhelmed and overtaken in majesty and awe. Those moments are transcendental. They're incredible. Every year I take my kids on a rite of passage trip from about the age of 6 or 7 on. And last year, my son and I climbed Kilimanjaro. The year prior, Mount Blanc. And
those moments where I stand somewhere with him, I often look back on with joy, longing. I have these experiences with everyone that I value, mostly with my wife, and then secondarily with my kids. What is happening when I feel completely, I have a buddy, Jesse Elder, and he talks about the slippery slope of language. So often we can't even describe what it is we're trying to say. There just aren't words capable of it. Words fail me in this moment. I'm talking about those moments where you look out, you're on the top of the Alps, you're with someone that means everything to you, and you are overwhelmed with emotional flooding of joy, of transcendence, of what is happening. Like, what is that from your perspective and from your experience?
I would call that the natural human desire to be more than self, more than human. It feels so good to be in touch with something much bigger than ourselves. But that could be temporary. You get a glimpse of it. You get a passing excitement and thrill. But then you come down off the mountain and life is ordinary again. In addition to seeing the majesty of it, the awesomeness of it, if you also look beyond what is visible to its origin, where does such beauty come from? From a creator. Then the creator is the essence of beauty. He didn't just make it, he made it beautiful. He made it awesome. So if you connect with the creator of this awesomeness, then even when you come down off the mountain, you're still in touch with the creator of the most beautiful things in the world, and you can relate to him. You can interact with him. You can join him and become a partner in creation. Then the excitement becomes a staple in your life, not just a rare occasion.
I like that. So have you had moments in your life, Rabbi, where you've questioned your belief, you've questioned your faith, where your faith has been truly tried?
My faith has been truly tried many times because my faith is only as strong as I am. But what I doubted was the reality, the sincerity, and the permanence of my faith. I didn't question what it is I believe in. Does that make any sense? I didn't question whether God was real. I questioned whether my faith in him was real. Because what was shaken was my faith, not him. It's not like God disappeared on me. My faith in him got shaken because my faith is vulnerable. But he is not. He's real. In other words, if I don't believe in him, he is still what he is. My faith doesn't make or break him. In exactly the same way, if I don't love my wife, she's no less my wife. Reality is not the sum total of my experience. There is reality that is bigger than me, beyond me, independent of me, and I'm trying to relate to it as best I can. And sometimes I can't, but it doesn't change. It's for real. Well, let's put it in different words. The thing you believe in must be more real than your belief in it.
So I love that. And that describes it somewhat. Before I jumped on this with you, I was posting something on Instagram, and Neil deGrasse Tyson, the astronomer, philosopher, had a post that came up. And as you know, he's adamantly atheist. And he posted an image that said, "Science doesn't care about what you believe in." Now, you can take that however you want. But having recently watched some of his videos, I believe that he is sending that message to people that are saying, hey, science is whatever, but my belief system trumps science. So, for instance, I have friends, in Sitka, Alaska, where I went to high school. I had two, just my closest buddies, and one of them very much was traditional. And I say this with all the respect in the world, but he didn't believe that dinosaurs really existed, that they were a test of our faith. Now, Neil deGrasse Tyson with his statement if he was having a conversation with him, because I've listened to him on YouTube, so this is based only on me listening to what he publishes on YouTube, would likely say that has no bearing. Dinosaurs existed, and here's all the evidence. So we live uniquely now in the sense that the opportunities and the options in what to believe are a lot more numerous than they were 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago. And in fact, the opportunity to believe or not believe was once not truly an opportunity. Your very life was at stake if you didn't follow mainstream thought. So in this world where there is a unending number of possibilities and you're not going to die for believing or not believing, how does one navigate tactically? Like tactically, Rabbi? I know that, because I have my own kids and I know the answers that I give to them. Pray, read, etc. But for someone that's older, that's not a child, someone who potentially, is going through a midlife crisis. And in this instance, I'm thinking more about some figures in my life that are older that I look up to kind of as mentors, who I've seen their lifestyles change over the last 5 years. How does someone navigate today with a foundation when the foundations are numerous and they can be anything? Do you have to ignore science, I guess?
Absolutely not. There's no conflict between science and God, none whatsoever. And there's really no conflict between science and faith, because science is a faith. You have faith in the facts. You have faith in the proofs, in the tests, in the results of the tests. So we have to be careful how we use the word faith. Does faith mean you're accepting stuff for no reason at all? If that's what faith means, then we should get rid of it. Do people not have faith in science? I'm talking to the student and he says, yeah, there are some gaps in the theory of evolution, but in time we'll figure it out. I said, are you sure? He says, absolutely. I said, is that not faith? You have faith in science or in scientists, which is fine. But don't say there is no faith, all faith is wrong. The question is, what is the role of faith? So I can tell you, I do not believe in God because I don't see why faith is necessary. God is the original being from which all else derives. That's not faith. That's a simple logical deduction. All things come from something else. There has to be the original being that started all. That original being is God. Now you can say, well, what do we know about this original being? Was it a subatomic particle? And you can call it whatever you want. It's the original stuff from which all else derives. No one can disagree with that and consider themselves logical. So is God a matter of faith, or is God a necessary understanding of our universe? Now, God can either be an unconscious object, tiny object, or he can be a conscious being. I prefer to think he's conscious. Does that make me a believer? Is that a leap of faith? No. It just seems like the original substance from which all else derives seems to know what he's doing. Why would we call that religion? Why would we call that faith? Some guy who says, I don't believe dinosaurs ever existed, isn't making any sense whatsoever. What makes you think that? Where did you get that? Where did you come to that conclusion? Why would you believe that? There are dinosaur bones. What's wrong with you? No, can't be. Why? What does this do for you? Is it written somewhere that you can't believe in dinosaurs? And on the other hand, I asked the scientist, you know what came from the beginning. Are you not interested in the beginning? Or is that not scientific enough? So why is the origin of the universe a religious subject? And I ask this both of the religious person and of the scientist. Without understanding God, you don't understand his universe. So if you want to know what a table is, you want to know what an atom is, you got to trace it back to where it came from. Don't stop at something and say, beyond this, it's not science. And here's the beautiful thing. The scientist has always tried to understand what a thing is. That's science. We now know scientifically that if we want to understand what a thing is, we have to find out why it is. If we don't know why it is, we don't know what it is. So science has to move up another step. Don't refuse the question of why. It's scientifically necessary to know why the world exists in order to understand what the world is. So I don't see any conflict between science and religion.
So I believe that evolution and creationism are not mutually exclusive. And in the culture that I find myself in, I'm in Utah, there seems to be, that is not popular. In fact, yesterday on the podcast, I had a friend that's from the South. And so he, is in the Bible Belt. And while he didn't say so, the feeling that I got from him was more of a feeling of, haha, apostate. Now, and if he's listening, it wasn't said vindictively, but it was more of like, okay, we need to pray for this man's soul. But I don't find them mutually exclusive. I believe that if there is a God, that he wouldn't just magically will things into existence, that things are built upon truth. Truths with enough knowledge are self-evident, and that there's logic and connection. There is a reason why in quantum physics, when you look at a particle, it acts like a wave and vice versa. Like all of this, we don't get it, but I don't believe that there has to be only one or the other. And I find that to be very unpopular, at least with who I talk to right now. You either have to make a stand and say the earth is 6,000 years old, even though we have evidence to the contrary, or you have to say, nope, it's, billions of years old and we're all formed in, there are more cells, there are more atoms in our each individual body than there are stars in this galaxy, yet every atom was formed in the center of a star. And what is your thought? Are they mutually exclusive, or is your understanding of God a God that uses natural law to create, and so they, instead of being two enemies, they are actually a beautiful dance?
It's not that God uses natural law. God created natural law because when he created the world, he created it with a stable, predictable behavior pattern, which is how we describe physical reality. Let's go back to the sunset. You had a beautiful example. When you're looking at the sunset and you're overwhelmed by something mystical, it's because all things begin from non-things. First, there was nothing, and then stuff came to existence. Watching the nothing become a something is absolutely awesome. When you look at a sunset, what you're seeing is something intangible, this thing called light. Like on the first day of creation, God said, let there be light. It was not the light of the sun, because the sun came on Wednesday. The light was illumination. It's almost a spiritual thing, not even a physical thing. Illumination, vision, the ability to see, not the physical sensation, but the spiritual awareness, the ability to be aware, which is light. And you see the light turn into color, you see it turn into photons, you see it turn into subatomic particles. You're seeing creation happening in front of your eyes. You're watching nothing, something. That's the mystical experience. When you see the non-being become being, because that's the process of creation. So everything starts off like in a theory. Everything first exists in a mathematical equation, and then slowly it starts to embody. It takes on a layer of mass, and then another layer and another layer, until it becomes an object, like a photon, which maybe is an object, is not an object, I don't know, something in between. So the physical result of the non-material, that's seeing creation in front of your eyes, and that is awesome.
Fascinating stuff. Okay, go for it.
One more thought. Art is the reverse process. You take a lump of clay, which is a very, very much an object with many layers of mass to it, and you peel away the mass until you reveal the energy or the non-material. So God creates from nothing to something, and the artist turns that something back into its nothing.
So where, with that in mind, Stephen Hawking just passed away. And one of the things that he talked about was, people call it different things, black matter, antimatter. We don't really know what it is, except that it has weight, but it's nothing. You know, they're able to create it for a fraction of a second in the Hadronian loop. And I'm probably saying that incorrectly. I forget exactly what it is, but in Europe, in that loop that spans multiple nations, we can create it for a second and then it disappears. These pursuits of attempting to understand this reality around us, what are your thoughts? We can measure the effect of what we do not know. So we can see what it is. There is antimatter because it moves matter. But we don't know what it is. We can create it for a second, but then it disappears. When you look at that, do you look at it as curiosity that we have as humans, as a folly? We're pursuing incorrect things. What's your view on just our desire to experience and understand the universe?
God created material, but God himself is not material. So what we see with our eyes is evidence of God's ability, not so much evidence of God's nature, of what God is like. When we start to probe the metaphysical stuff, the intangible stuff, we're really trying to understand not how God created or what he created, but what is he before he creates. And that's why Hasidic philosophy that specializes on that subject, we really have a lot of insight and information on the intangible, the metaphysical part of reality. It's a fascinating subject. And you can call it spiritual, but it's as real as matter. Energy is as real as matter. So when science pushes the envelope to where we're looking at things that don't actually exist in the common sense of the word, we're getting closer to understanding what God might be like. So science and religion are coming closer together while scientists and religious thinkers are fighting with each other. It's totally unnecessary.
I had a buddy, and he said to me once, just talking about things, he was religious when we were in high school, and now believes in consciousness, but not what people would call organized religion. And he once said, gods don't kill people, people with gods kill people. What do you think about how we treat each other because we believe differently? What is that? Why do we do that?
We're nasty.
Why? Why are we?
Why are we nasty?
Yeah.
Because when we were created with free choice, it had to include the choice of being bad. Otherwise, we're not really free. So we have an attraction to bad and we have an attraction to good, and now we have to make a free choice of which of the two attractions we're going to follow. Some people choose to follow the downward pull, the gravitational pull, and they choose what is unworthy. But there's an attraction to it, otherwise we have no free choice. So to have free choice, you have to be given choices, and they have to be equally appealing. So some people will choose what is appealing in the evil, in the dark side, in the bad, and some people will choose what is appealing in the good. Most people are kind of in between.
I had a business partner, and he was raised Jehovah's Witness. And his parents believed that he was not part of the 177,000. And I may be getting the numbers wrong, but I'm just sharing his experience. Because of choices he has made, he wasn't one of them. And so they kicked him out of the house when he was 14. And for years, he was homeless, and economically, he turned his life around. He is worth tens of millions of dollars, and he's a good human being. He is a good person. Now, he told me that he'll wake up in the middle of the night in sweats because he has on his shoulder this belief that when he closes his eyes for the last time, if he even gets to close them, maybe he dies with his eyes open. But when he closes them, when he breathes his last breath, that's it. That'll happen in 30 or 40 years if he's lucky, maybe 50. It could happen tomorrow if a truck hits him. And so this fear of wanting to stay above water, but slowly sinking, really grasps him significantly, like very significantly. And I asked him once, so if you think it's all going to end and that, by random chance we are here, is there such thing as right and wrong? And he said, no. And I'm like, so you walking up and killing an innocent person, that's not wrong? And he said, no, we've for society to exist, we've created right and wrong. But intrinsically, there is not right and wrong. It's this thing that it is nothing because there's not matter behind it. It is a construct that we have created. So my question to you, Rabbi, is what is right and wrong? What is it? Because you almost have to be self-aware of the fact that you're self-aware to accept right and wrong as something that is intrinsically there. What is right and wrong? Like, not in the term of language. It's right to be nice, it's wrong to be bad. But what is this thing, right and wrong?
You say he's very wealthy?
He is.
He is. Okay. It's amazing that there are people today who are worth $100 billion. It's almost mystical. Like, $100 billion? What does that even mean? But is there any doubt in the minds of people who are worth that much money? Is there any doubt in their mind that all that money was never meant for them? I mean, is it possible that all that money was for their personal benefit? It doesn't even benefit them. You have 1,000 years, maybe not, that's not even enough. Spend $100 billion. So there's no question. People have what they don't need, so obviously it was meant for someone else. That's the difference between good and bad. Bad is the instinct or the impulse that says, everything I have is for me. If I just share it, it's because I'm a wonderful guy. I'm charitable, I'm magnanimous, I'm wonderful. A good person is the person to whom that doesn't make any sense. It makes more sense that what I have is for me to deliver to someone else. That's it.
That's interesting. I have never heard right and wrong described like that. And that makes sense. He would ask, he may not use it, but he's earned it when someone else was doing nothing to earn it. They have the same amount of time that he has. So why is it not for him?
What's he going to do with it?
Have it.
In other words, anything you have that you don't need was obviously meant for somebody else. And that applies to everything. You have a lot of information and wisdom. What? That's for you to keep? You have love. You have energy. You're capable. All of that was for you to keep? That's as ridiculous as keeping your money under a mattress. I have money. Well, don't be a fool. Either spend it, invest it, give it. It's not meant to sit under your mattress. There are people who have that instinct. I have love. What am I supposed to do? Love myself? That's ridiculous. Love is meant to be given. It's not for me. And if you really want to be a good, healthy, and productive human being, your life itself, your life, was not meant for you. You live to be able to help somebody else. We got to stop being so parochial. My children are for me. My spouse is for me. No, I'm not that needy. I have things and therefore I am needed. What I have is necessary for someone somewhere, and I am meant to deliver it. So if I see somebody unhappy, it's my job to give a little of my enthusiasm, of my optimism, of my input of life, to give it to another person. What am I saving it for? And that's why the thought that someday it's all going to end, and then what? Yeah, that's true. If you kept it all for yourself, and then you're dead, where's all that going to go? So give it away, so that when you pass away, you've done your job, you've served your purpose, you've spread what was given to you to others and made life better.
Rabbi, it has been incredible. Thank you so much for the time. I've enjoyed the conversation. I'm certain that the audience listening has enjoyed it as well. Where can people find you online, and how can they engage with you?
Well, they can find me. Itsgoodtoknow.org. It's good to know, and it is good to know. It's goodtoknow.org.
Thank you so much.
It'll take.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it'll take you to all the other sites where my lectures are online, my book is online. You can get it all.
All right, Rabbi, thank you so much again. I appreciate it. I'd love to chat with you again in 4 or 5 months and have a follow-up conversation if you're amenable to it.
I would love it. This is my thing. I live for this.
Love it. Thank you, Rabbi, and thank you, audience. We will see you again tomorrow on iTunes with another episode of the